All right. Well, welcome back to the F3 podcast. Today I got with me Kip Lowry. Funny, respect. Good to have you here, Funny.
Good to be here.
Yeah, glad you're willing to come on with this. We're in chapter Q 1.5 M's. If you're new to F3 in the lexicon, M is your wife. So Funny, some of us know that you and your wife work out together, and your M actually leads FIA. What's FIA?
FIA is Females in Action. And
Okay.
so some of the M's, the PAX M's have connected with her. Some PAX are like, please help get my wife out there, but they meet a little bit later, but it's a good group of ladies.
So if your wife's looking to get plugged in,
Yeah.
we can get contact info from you, and you can get them connected with your
Yep,
wife.
100%. Yeah.
Cool. And is that outside?
It is outside, yeah. And it's less intense. So really, like, I think you could probably, like Poppy's wife and others, they can say, it's still a workout, but it's not as intimidating as like F3 can be.
Yeah.
I guess.
Gotcha.
I say that.
That's good. And I know my wife's longing to meet more M's. So your wives who are watching, they might long as well.
Yep.
So let's just jump straight from the first Socratic in this chapter. The first question that Dredd poses to us is work-life balance, a useful concept. Love to hear your thoughts on work-life balance and how that interacts with our marriage and our relationships.
Yeah, I think, well, let's see. So I think he dispels it, like in terms of work-life balance. And we chatted, like the book, The One Thing, also talks about how really trying to get things in balance. And yeah, that's right. He used the spinning plates analogy. It's useful, like, hey, don't work too much, have these places that you focus on, like family and outside of work, rather than be a workaholic. But I think, like one of the other Socratics is, if all relationships are the same, then you're going to spend an equal amount of time with everybody, and it's just you don't have enough life in you. And so being a married man, your wife is the most important relationship that I think you can have, and can be the most difficult, because you're intimate. They know you and you know them, and she knows my bad habits. She knows my good like when I'm fixing stuff or something. And so over 24 years of marriage, we've had ups and downs. I'm sure, like every other really relationship. So times of forgiveness and awesome times, and the whole gamut. So it's definitely, you don't balance that. You don't balance your relationship that way. Like he uses the bullseye target. And I 100% agree with that. That if you shoot for that, shoot for serving. Go back to ugly. There's times where, like, she's doing stuff and I'm on the couch and I'm like, I should be helping her. And I'm like, maybe it's the Jester going, I'm enjoying myself, right? That's not shooting for the bullseye. That's shooting for my bullseye, for me, rather than that. So, and I think that actually adds up, right? There's this assumption with women, like, you should be, women, my wife, that you should know, like, I'm here working, you should see and be aware that I am doing stuff and you're not. And so the negative talk could be like, well, you didn't tell me what to do, but that's not shooting for the bullseye.
No.
Right. So I'm definitely guilty of that. And yeah.
Well, I like what Dredd says, because you're right. He dispels work-life balance. And I like how he calls it finding a relational rhythm. And I think that's a better way to look at it. Like, we're not going to be able to balance all the spinning plates, but we can create a rhythm, and rhythms change depending on the season that you're in. And being able to you can stay in rhythm with your wife even when you have less time with them.
Yeah.
knowing that you're supporting each other in the greater vision of the family and what you're trying to accomplish. But if we're always working for balance, something is going to suffer because it's impossible, versus finding a rhythm where we're looking for, you know, something greater. So of all these years of marriage, funny, what would you say is the number one? What's the key? What's the key to strong marriage? I mean, I'm not at 24 years yet. We'll be 19 in July. So what's the key to a strong marriage?
Um, Communication, 100% communication. Um, from little things like the examples I gave you was burgers, right? I wanted to make sliders, and my wife got the pre-made sliders, but I like to spread the meat out. And so she was like, "Oh, But another thing happened this week that I'm just gonna, as you say, I'm gonna tell him myself. Um, where we were talking, and she said something that shut me down, and she recognized like, oh, and did I shut you down? I'm like, yeah, you kind of did, and that started another conversation where um I because we're honestly like we're not as like when we were rucking, we're closer. Now we're busy and kids, and so we don't feel as close.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that starts this internal dialogue, like if she shuts me down or I shut her down, where we're like, oh, why even talk about it? Why even I'm not gonna win that. That's fine. Da da da. She'll probably this. Oh, she probably moved my stuff. This all this like gesture stuff, and like for me, it made me think of like the bullseye. Like if I'm shooting for the bullseye and I'm criticizing her internally and not even talking, we're not even working whatever problem is out. That's almost like shrinking the bullseye down to this like infinitesimal thing that like a dartboard, like and it's like why even shoot an arrow at that? Like there's no way I can hit that. And so
So
and
you
so
give
you know
up before you even try.
yeah, so you end up shooting at other things to fill that relationship. So communication about like family duties and stuff like that, but really like feelings and the stuff we're really good at talking about as men, right? We're really good at talking about our feelings.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. But
Some people I'm not. So like
yeah,
it,
but
it
if we
just
sweep it under the rug, eventually
yes,
it's coming out.
yes. And that's where it gets back to his if you're not accelerating, you're decelerating.
Yeah.
And so having that for me, recognizing this week, having that negative criticize and talk, it decelerates. And then when you're decelerating, you know, uh, the other thing is the football meeting
Mm-hmm.
halfway, right? You're not even gonna be halfway.
Mm.
You're gonna just be withdrawing and and not pursuing and not trying to accelerate.
I
So
mean, let's put our finger on that one. So there is no 50-yard line. So Dredd in the book is saying, there's no halfway is not good enough when it comes to our M. We're not playing football. There's no 50-yard line. There's no coin flip. There's no
yeah,
you don't just meet in the middle. Like if you're going to have an accelerating relational rhythm, we can't be looking just to do our part,
yeah,
right? I think we've got to be looking at what's the goal line for the family. And some days I'm going to have to carry the ball the whole field
yep,
in hopes that the days that I get injured on the field, that she can carry the ball the rest of the way. Like we can't just commit to our 50% like we're business partners. We've got to commit to taking it all the way.
yep, yep, 100% agree. Yeah. Um, uh,
But that's hard to
yep,
do when you start to get competitive with each other, when you start to be competitive for time, who's worked harder, right? Who
yep,
worked longer this week? I mean, I learned years ago that I might leave the house and go to work. My wife stays at home, but there's nothing I will ever do that is hard as the day that she had. Now, sometimes I don't know if I agree with it, but the reality is I didn't stay home all day with the kids, doing the laundry, making the dinner. And I've got to realize no matter how hard a day it is, when I get home, I can't just stop and say, oh, I did my 50%, and
hmm
I'm exhausted, right? It's
yeah.
what's the family need to keep the ball moving.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's when that 50% mentality creeps in like, "Oh, I've earned this time
Yeah.
to sit here while you're doing whatever," right? And so yeah. And maybe even that's a discussion like, "Hey, when I come home, I'd like to have an hour or 30
Hmm.
minutes or just decompress or something. But I want to help you. Like even having that conversation, I want
Yeah.
to help you. What can I do to help you? And sort of like decompress from whatever stresses go on. But that's the communication rather than just, man, I never get any of my time. Fine, I'll help her. Right. That sort of uh halfway. That'd be
Yeah,
like
that's
the
right.
half,
Right.
right? That sort
Not
of internal.
communicating, just giving up or complaining. She
Yeah.
never gives me my time. It's like you complain about something long enough. I mean, really, at what point can you just have a conversation and you
Yeah.
communicate and say, this is important to me? And chances
Yeah.
are we don't know some of those little things that are important to each other, that in order
Yep.
for our relationship to continue to accelerate, we have to continue to communicate, as you say.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, use the bullseye analogy and about putting your wife in the center of the bullseye as a target that you're shooting for, right? And making the wife bigger. But why even? There's so many things we could put in our bullseye, but why put the M in the bullseye? Why is putting our wife first one of the first things we should do and the most important?
Why?
Well, why do you use the bullseye to describe your relationship with your wife? Like, why would your wife be in? Why is the wife being in the center of the bullseye such an important thing in your life?
Simply put, for me, it's like life. Um, because I love her and we have a synergy and um like I enjoy spending time with her. So I mean, as opposed to like other things, like you could put fitness. Oh, you know, I'm just got an F3, I'm overweight. Fitness becomes my bullseye. Um, I don't know. I think God made us to be connected, have a soulmate
Yeah,
that is like, I don't know. I mean, we're getting older, and sometimes I think about, okay, what if what if my wife were to die, or like I would just, me, I would be like, I don't know what to do. Like it's like for me, I see so much better things. Like
yeah,
compliment, like okay, I have my strengths, sure, but like she has so much grace and love and the way she leads our homeschool community and like they're yeah, I think and I think if you don't have that vision or connection, you need to spend more time. Like maybe you are doing the halfway, meeting halfway or not making the target. Because it's hard to do that, like make her the target every single day because life is just so busy and work. But
yeah. But we prioritize our wives, right? Like you
yeah,
said, and
yeah,
and sometimes there's seasons where certain other things have to get done in order to make that relationship
yeah.
possible. But some of the worst days I have is when I know that there's something in between my wife and I.
Oh yeah.
That's the worst day.
It
I
is
don't
the
care how
worst.
good anything else is going on. If I leave the house and we're in an argument, like that is the worst.
Yes. 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 100. Like saying it's like having a rock in your shoe is like like
Yeah.
underplaying the actual. Yeah, it's the worst.
And
The
it's
worst.
not because I'm worried about getting in trouble with my wife. It's that we've become that close relationally and your wife becomes a part of you. One thing we talked about, I think we'd be remiss without saying is, for us fathers, I really believe the most loving thing we can do to our kids is to love our wives first. A lot of people would say, your kids are vulnerable, put them first. But I think the most stabilizing thing in a child's life is to know that mom and dad love each other. And maybe you'd be divorced, but to know that your parents cared for each other, that
Yeah.
grounds a child. Would you agree?
I would agree. I would agree. And even there's been times where they know we're
Yeah.
in Discord, and so we talk about what
Mm-hmm.
the issue is in front of them with, age
Yep.
appropriate. But just that, hey, we're fallen too. We make mistakes. Dad makes mistakes. Mom makes mistakes, but we forgive each other and we pursue each other so that they're not like, oh, well, I guess it's okay. Like they don't know. So again, even that unified communication with you and your M. is worth pursuing. So
So if we leave our guys with some tactics and some things, I'd love for you to tell a story about you and your wife working out and rucking, because I don't think, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you've always done that. And
no,
so how did that start? What has that meant for your relationship? Maybe there's something the rest of us can glean from that story.
um, okay. So yeah, 2020 was a game changer. I got my first ruck. I did a Go Ruck event in the sort of the way things were in 2020. And then my wife is like, "Hey, I want to ruck." And I was like, "What?" And we did an event, the next event. So my second, her first, and we're carrying logs around, and it was actually not what I expected. It was really hard. And she thought it was hard, and I remember we went PF Chang's, we got some good food, and yeah, it was just very, very unifying experience where we're like, okay, we're gonna have to work out for these things. And and we just started like a training program, and we would ruck around our neighborhood, and we would talk. I mean, it's really like that was kind of our joke, like let's go on a date, and we would ruck the neighborhood. But it was a great time to plan, do the family planning, but also, get to know each other. And honestly, like it's something like being injured with my tendonitis last year and lazy and it being cold. Like we really haven't rucked together, and we both really miss it. So even I don't know, like everyone's wife is different, but it's and even doing these hard events, some of them are like 24 hours, you know, carrying the sandbags, switching off, and it's a like go like stuff like that in general is this mysterious feeling of wow, I just did that, hard, really hard thing.
And
And
it really brings people together when they do hard
yes,
things together.
people, and then doing it with your wife, and
Life.
it's even more closer together. So, um, yeah, so it was not expected. This is like 20 years in our marriage. We hadn't worked out beforehand. And then and simply I scoffed at her. I'm like, really? Okay, I'll get you a ruck. You better use it,
Mm-hmm.
Boy, has she used it.
Yeah. I'll tell a quick story of something I witnessed. So
Sure.
my folks, I grew up in the men in my family would go hunting. And the men, we leased this property a couple hours away from where I grew up. And the men would leave on the weekends in the fall and go hunting and chop firewood on the weekends. And it was always without the women. And when I had moved out of the house, maybe I was in college or living down in North Carolina, and my dad found this hunting property that came up for sale. And he went to his hunting buddy and said, "Hey, this property came up for sale. Let's buy it." Well, all of his best friends said, "No, we don't want to do that." And it crushed him because he found this amazing property. He wanted to buy it, and they thought it would be the best thing for their friendships to go to another level. And they all said no. And it seemed to somewhat temporarily put a real damper on their relationship. Well, the most amazing thing happened. Now hunting stopped being something he did with his friends, and now my mom came with him. And they started doing this thing together, and it completely revolutionized their relationship. And it seemed to be such a setback. It was so surprising. But now they have this common thing that they did together instead of doing it apart. That has,
Yeah.
really been a testament to what can happen in a marriage. And I'm so proud of them. And it's really inspiration for me. So love to hear stories about common vision, common cause, common purpose.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes me think of sort of the way things used to be as a
Yeah.
family, because the industry was a home, whether you were a farmer or a blacksmith, and the men and women were doing the same thing, but they were in proximity with each other and helping each other and a team for
Yeah.
survival, right?
Yeah. Survival.
Um, and so that's sort of the travesty of, I think, modern age is like everything is so fractured and split up. And maybe one blessing of the uh, COVID time is that more people are working at home and
Mhm.
maybe can facilitate those family and marriage relationships. So, but that's a great story. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it here. I just really appreciate you coming on, being willing to share. about your relationship with your wife. I hope it's been encouraging to other packs. And I just want to leave you packs with just a challenge. Look for ways that you can form deeper relationships with your spouse. And I think Funny and I would say, stop looking for work-life balance. Look for relational rhythm.
Yep.
Look for how you can take your family football down the field together.
Yep.
Come closer along that mission, that vision, that purpose, rather than just trying to meet someone halfway.
Yep. 100%.
Great. Well, we'll see you this week at the Q Source table.
Yep.
And then we'll see you next week on the podcast. Thanks, Funny.
All right. Cool. Cheers. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.